Labour Day weekend in 1974. The Cowden family pack up all their gear and bundle into their car, heading for the Oregon wilderness for a wee camping trip. They would never make it back home. Hi folks, I'm Johnny. Welcome to The Oddest. Let's have a wee look at the chilling case of the Cowden family. So, the Cowden family. Richard Cowden was a 28-year-old logging truck driver, providing for his 22-year-old wife Belinda and his two kids. David was 5 and Melissa was only 5 months old. It was Labour Day weekend back in 1974, August into September. Richard had big plans for the weekend as he was fixing to sort out his driveway. He had gotten hold of a truck to transport the gravel that he needed. However, best laid plans and all that, the truck that he was planning to use for this task had broken down. So now what? Well, as he was at a loose end for the weekend, the family decided to go on a wee camping trip. They all lived in White Plains, Oregon, which was about a 3-hour drive from their destination in the Siskiyou Mountains in Copper, Oregon. They had been there before, so the campsite was fairly known to them. They would arrive on the 30th of August near to Cranberry Creek. As Richard parked the 1956 Ford pickup truck, he opened the door to let Droopy, the family basset hound, out to run around. The next morning, September 1st, at around 9 AM, Richard and his son David would walk to the Copper General Store to pick up some milk. They were only there for a few moments. After getting the supplies that they needed, they said goodbye to the shopkeeper and headed back to the campsite. That would be the last time that any member of the Cowden family would be seen alive. The camping ground that they chose was by design, as it was only a mile away from Belinda's mother, so they made plans to visit her on the return journey home. However, after the family failed to show up as expected for dinner, Belinda's mother decided that she would make the short journey up to the campgrounds herself. Maybe she could meet them halfway. Maybe there was an issue with the car. She would soon discover it was neither. Upon her arrival at the campsite, she was met with a puzzling sight. No one was around. Richard, Belinda, David and baby Melissa were nowhere to be found. Adding to this puzzle was the truck parked as normal, the keys to which were sitting on the picnic table right next to Belinda's purse. Clothes and unpacked belongings were still within the truck. Belinda's pack of cigarettes were also found nearby, as well as the diaper bag for the baby, along with a half-full carton of milk. The camp stove had already been built, and on it was a dish of now cold water. On the ground was Richard's expensive wristwatch and wallet. After searching the grounds and waiting for close to an hour, Belinda's mother contacted the police. The sheriff, state troopers as well as other state police shortly arrived at the scene and commenced a search of the area until darkness fell. One of the state troopers, Trooper Erickson, would later go on to say that the camp was spooky. Even the milk was still on the table. It was like the entire family suddenly vanished. Leading the investigation was Lieutenant Mark Kazar. He would later say that the investigation was delayed by a day due to the fact that all of those involved deemed it extremely unlikely that anything violent occurred and that there was a reasonable explanation for the missing family of 4. In the early hours of the 2nd of September, the family dog Droopy was found clawing at the door of the general store down in Copper, the same store that Richard and young David had just been at a day before. Word soon spread of the missing family. This yielded hundreds of volunteers who all flocked to the area to assist the police in the hopes of finding them. Also joining the search was the Oregon National Guard, the Explorer Scouts and the United States Forest Service, who ended up searching over 25 miles of roads and trails using aircraft and thermal imaging devices. Despite all of this, the Cowden family remained missing. The search officially ended on the 7th of September. However, the search was not over for the family and friends that were determined to find answers. To say that the vanishing of the family was a puzzle is an understatement. Robbery was ruled out as a motive, as all of their personal belongings, Richard's wallet and watch, all remained at the campsite in full view. Looking at the family situation again, there was no obvious reason from that side of things, as they seemed happy and they were financially and emotionally stable. There were no signs of struggle either, which would rule out kidnapping. It was a true mystery. For all intents and purposes, it was like they just simply vanished. A small reward was posted for any information that would lead to the whereabouts of the family. Richard's sister wrote to the Medford Mail Tribune. See, hunting season was about to begin, and it was known that a lot more people would be in and around that area and in the wilderness. In her letter, she requested that the paper print her message, in which she pleaded with readers anything that could be connected to a man, woman, a 5-year-old child, or a 5-month-old baby. Even though we try not to let our hopes dwindle that they will be found alive, we ask that you will even check freshly turned piles of earth. We will truly appreciate any clue or help that some hunter may find. Back then, there was a senator in Oregon called Mark Hatfield. He received a petition from over 200 citizens requesting that with his help, that they persuade the FBI to take up this investigation. The petition, however, was denied on the grounds that there were no evidence that the Cowdens had been kidnapped or taken across state lines. It was first thought that there may have been a connection between the Cowdens' disappearance and the mysterious disappearances of 8 women in the Oregon area. However, the 8 women that vanished would later be uncovered as victims of the serial killer Ted Bundy. 7 months later, on the 12th of April 1975, 2 gold prospectors from Forest Grove, Oregon, were hiking through the woods near Carberry Creek when they discovered the decomposing body of an adult male tied to a tree on a steep hillside. In a small cave nearby, the bodies of an adult female, a child, and an infant were discovered. Positive identification of the bodies as those of the Cowden family was made via dental records. The location where the bodies were discovered was approximately 7 miles from the family's campsite. Autopsies revealed that Belinda and David had died as a result of a .22 caliber gunshot. 5-month-old Melissa had died from severe head trauma. Law enforcement suspected that Richard Cowden died at the location of where his body was found, but were unable to determine a cause of death. It was surmised by investigators that Belinda, their 2 children, could have potentially been killed elsewhere and subsequently concealed in the cave. Law enforcement searched the surrounding area for a murder weapon, but were unable to recover one. Interviews were conducted with numerous people who were at the campground on September 1st. One family from LA had arrived at the campground at 5 p.m. that day. Whilst they were walking in the park that evening, they witnessed 2 men and a woman parked nearby in a pickup truck. The father of that family recalled, "They acted like they were waiting for us to leave, and frankly, they made us nervous, so we moved on." Based on the location of Belinda's and the children's bodies inside that cave, Lieutenant Kazar suspected that the person responsible was a local resident who knew this area and were aware of that cave's location. After the family's remains were recovered, a resident of Grants Pass who had volunteered in the search told police that in September he had searched that cave where Belinda and the children's bodies were found, and they were definitely not there at the time. To confirm that he was referring to the same cave, law enforcement officers had the man escort them to the cave that he had searched, and it was the same cave where the bodies had been discovered. Dwayne Lee Little, a 25-year-old from Jackson County, was considered a suspect in their murders. Little had been paroled from the Oregon State Penitentiary in Salem on May 24th of 1974, which was 3 months prior to the Cowdens' disappearance. When he was just 16 years old in 1964, he had raped and murdered teenager Orla Faye Phipps. State police were able to determine that Little had been in Copper over that Labour Day weekend at that approximate location and time that the Cowden family disappeared. Little's girlfriend told law enforcement later that she had seen him with a .22 caliber gun during Christmas of 1974. On January 12, 1975, his parole was revoked after he informed police of his possession of this firearm. Dwayne Lee Little was paroled again on April 26, 1977. On June 2, 1980, he picked up a pregnant 23-year-old named Margie Hunter, whose car had broken down near Portland, Oregon, sexually assaulted and beat her. Hunter and her unborn child survived this, and Little was charged and convicted of attempted homicide and sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. Police later suspected that the 2 men and woman in that truck that were reported by that Los Angeles family at the campground were in fact Little and his parents, as their truck matched the description provided by the family. Little and his parents denied any knowledge of the Cowdens' disappearances. However, a miner who owned a cabin nearby claimed that Little and his parents had stopped by on Monday, September 2nd, 1974 and signed a guest book that he kept there for visitors. Rusty Kelly, an inmate who at one time shared a cell with Dwayne Little, would later claim that he confessed to the Cowdens' murders. Despite the sheer volume of circumstantial evidence, Little has never been charged with the murders of the Cowden family. A few months after the family's bodies were recovered, Richard Cowden's father took his own life. Although some commentators have suggested that this does seem suspicious, it was looked at by police and he was cleared of any involvement in what happened to his son, his daughter-in-law and his grandchildren. The murders of the Cowden family is known as being one of the most baffling, unsolved crimes in Oregon history. Whether it was Dwayne Little or not, the thing that doesn't seem clear is motive. Why would someone brutally murder the entire family, including a baby? Police are no closer to finding that answer. We can only hope that in time the truth will be revealed and that the Cowden family are at peace. That wraps up this story, folks. Thanks for watching, I definitely appreciate it. Why not give me a wee thumbs up and maybe subscribe also? It only takes a second. Take care of yourselves, tell someone you love them, and remember, no matter how hard things seem, keep smiling.